There are so many symbols for the winter holidays. I've chosen 2 for Christmas and 1 for Kwanzaa. Today we're going to work on wreaths, a reindeer from Santa Claus's reindeer, and we're going to make a drum with the colors of Kwanzaa and the muhindi that represents children in Swahili. We're going to do the first symbol associated with Christmas, among many symbols, Rudolph. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw him, you would even say it glows. All right, so to do a reindeer, one of Santa's reindeers, there are of course many ways to do it, but this is what I did. I used my fingers and I put them close together on a sheet of paper, of course. So first on the left side, and then give it a little space in between for the reindeer's head, and then on the right. Okay, so there you have the reindeer, and now we're going to put his head in between and create some ears that come out under the reindeer. Okay, join that all together, and then his face. Okay, give him some fun eyes and a big mouth. And then, of course, you can color this any way you want. I did the antlers in black, and then Rudolph's face in brown, eyes black, mouth red. You can certainly do it in any type of color scheme that you want. Now, it occurred to me that I could fasten that to the back of a paper plate, and if I put it up against something, it would stand up. It also occurred to me if I wanted Rudolph to stand on its own, if I had a paper towel roll, I could attach it that way as well if I cut it. Or I could leave it on the white paper and not cut it out. So that's Rudolph. All right, now this next project was a really new for me. This is a wreath, and the wreath, the circular shape of a wreath represents eternity, no beginning, no end. And we use wreaths at Christmas, but now I noticed in Louisville and other parts of the country, people have wreaths on their home all year round. Some of them are for spring or autumn or 4th of July. Sometimes we have wreaths for the Derby. So initially though, they were at the winter time, and they were in evergreen, and evergreen is a sign of hope and growth. Now, what I did for my wreath, and there's just so many things you can do with this project, is I took one of these small paper plates and cut it out. You can see the only part that's really difficult is cutting it out, and you might need an older family member to help you with that. Just be a little bit careful that you don't cut yourself. I sort of stabbed the scissors in the middle there to cut it out. You also may want to use a bigger plate like this one, except that I didn't have a pure white plate. That's why I chose not to use this. Okay, so after you cut it out, then I colored the rim green. And what I would suggest to you to do that I did not do, which would make it much easier, is to then attach your ribbon. You can attach your ribbon with Scotch tape. I used a very strong Scotch tape that you use when you're packaging up presents and so forth, or sending packages in the mail. You could also staple it, or you could also use glue. But I would do that before I did anything in terms of attaching articles onto the wreath. Now, today, this is the first time I've done this, I dyed some of the pasta we had in the house. You could also dye bow ties. That would be really appropriate for a wreath. And I just took red coloring, food coloring, and poured it over the pasta and let it sit that way for about 30 or 40 minutes. I also attached some cranberries, all kinds of other things you could attach, cotton balls for snow, types of cereal, little pieces of ribbon. You could make stars or ornaments and attach it. So there's just a whole variety of types of items you could put on your wreath. Now, I warn you that make sure when you're doing this, especially when you attach the glue to the wreath, that you definitely have newspaper or some kind of paper underneath to protect your table. So now I put Merry Christmas on mine and attached some green stars. Maybe you don't celebrate Christmas, maybe it's Happy New Year or Happy Kwanzaa or just Happy Holidays or Happy Winter. And of course the attachment of a salutation is not necessary, it's just an idea. So this is a wreath, and the wreath and Rudolph are the two symbols that I worked on today for Christmas. As you can see, all these different symbols that represent Kwanzaa, of course the kinara, the kikombe cha umoja, the cup of unity, and Kwanzaa is about the harvest, because in Africa they are on a different cycle than we are, so their seasons are different, so this is the time for them to harvest. And so that's what this food represents. And then my drum represents the corn and the colors of the African flag and the colors that are used to represent Kwanzaa, which are black, red, and green. So I'm going to show you how I made my drum. This is an oatmeal container, so you might have something different, but I used an oatmeal container. And since our paper's 11 inches, I am going to only use 9 of those inches and divide each one of them into 3. So I'm putting a mark at 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. All right, and then I am drawing straight lines and coloring each one of these strips in the colors of the kinara, the red, and I'm not going to do it all the way because of video time, but the red represents the blood that has been shed by Black people throughout history. The green represents hope in the future. And the black represents the Black people themselves. Now you would fill these strips in all the way, and then I attach them to my oatmeal box. Okay, now you can take the extra paper, you can attach this with Scotch tape, which is what I did. You could use glue, but I think that would be very difficult. I would go ahead with Scotch tape, and then what I did is I pressed down, sort of sometimes like what I do when I'm wrapping a present. I pressed down on the extra paper and taped that. You can see how I've done that here on the bottom. Now, you still have part of the oatmeal box that's not covered. And so that part I put on the muhindi. The muhindi is corn in Swahili, and it's prescribed that for Kwanzaa, depending on how many children are in the family, there should be a head of corn, an ear of corn for each child. So in our case, there were 4 ears of corn during the years that we celebrated Kwanzaa. So let's put together the ear of corn. So we start out with a point here and kind of bring it down, and then a leaf out here, and then a leaf out here, and this was painted or colored green, and then the center was done in yellow, and then I used little squiggles to represent the corn. Now, what would have been really neat if I had had it is to actually glue popcorn onto the corn, but I didn't have popcorn with me today. So then I attached that piece to the part of the drum that was still not covered. Now, my drum sounds different depending on which side you use. So that's one side, that's the plastic cover side. And on the bottom, so you can decide what your preference is. I wish you a very happy holiday and look forward to seeing you in January. This is Dr. D. All the best. Can I see that much?